BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. Largest selection of odds on everything: football, NBA, NHL, entertainment, and even those political props. Head to BetOnline today. Get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Welcome to another edition of Believe in Giants. Bob Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks, trying to make some sense of the Giants' most unnerving loss. This one to the Commanders, 27-22. And Carl, there's so many things to dig into this game, to go for two, to not go for two, timeout usage. But at the end of the day, every week a fatal flaw shows up. And I just keep going back to your phrase that so-and-so player or so-and-so unit is really good until they're not.
Until they're not. Yeah.
And yesterday was a screaming example of the 2024 New York Giants, with things that you like about the team and then things that are just unnerving and cost them football games, which we saw yesterday.
Bob, it's, they have yet to figure out how to play complementary football. When one side of the ball is good, the other side of the ball is not. They've yet to put together an effort where both sides bring it to the table and they complement each other. This week, the offense was efficient, effective, and the defense tackled like it was week 3 of the season. I said on Friday, on our podcast Friday, folks, if you listen, I said nothing about this game when you're a 2-win team. Nothing about this game is routine. Nothing. You have to prioritize every single possession, every single down. The offense did that. They did not have a single procedural penalty. They had one penalty for the game, and it was a BS pass interference call. So the team, the part of the team that just didn't get it done on Monday Night Football for all the things, all of a sudden they prioritized every possession. The offense prioritized every single possession. Your defense did not. And like I said, when you're a 2-win team, there's nothing routine about what you do. You have to prioritize every single down, every single series. Carl, why do you say that?
Why do you say that, Carl?
Well, Austin Eckler was the replacement for Brian Robinson, right? So I guess in the Giants' mind, they got a bit of a reprieve because Brian Robinson is the power runner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I said on Friday, Austin Eckler is kind of their Swiss Army knife. He does everything. He runs, he catches, he does everything. They couldn't tackle the guy. They might as well have been facing Brian Robinson. Nothing about a 2-win team is routine. If Austin Eckler gets hit at the line of scrimmage and they spot the ball 5 yards later, and you got a bunch of Giants on his back, it would stand to reason when you got to the sideline, which this probably should have been discussed prior to the game. When you got to the sideline, you might want to come up with a plan on how you want to tackle a player. And maybe I'm taking for granted that the teams I played on, we always had a plan of how we wanted to tackle running backs.
I saw on X last night, you and Pepper Johnson were chopping it up a little bit about this exact subject.
Yeah, like one thing we know, we would go into the game knowing, okay, this is a guy You don't want to take him on high because he's got powerful legs. If we're going to take him on high, we're going to get the first guy high, the second guy, take his legs out. The third guy, take his legs out. But it is baffling to me that a running back can run the same way for the entire game and no adjustment it's made. Nothing, when you're a 2-win team, nothing is routine about what you do.
Even Chris Rodriguez off the bench, off the practice squad, did the same thing.
Right. So they have a style. They have a style of runners. And it's really baffling because, first of all, tackling is a ruthless activity. So don't approach it in any other manner. Their guy has to be on the ground. If you can't get him on the ground by jumping on his back, he can't run if he got no legs. It's just that simple. So if Dexter can hold a guy up for you and you second level defenders, don't jump on Dexter's back. Don't get in the guy. Go take the guy's legs out. And I'm not advocating hurting someone, but it's a malicious activity. It's a ruthless activity. You've got to go and hit a guy in his legs because he is plowing you over every time he touches the football. And if you can't get him down up high, then you got to go low. It's simple. One guy wrap him, the next guy's take him out. And you do that enough times, you start hitting the guy in his legs, a runner in his legs, while he's standing up, he ain't going to want to do that much more. But the Giants thought it was just a routine tackle, and they just got embarrassed. And
there were times where it looked like the tush push, where they would have initial contact, and then the blob would just move another 3 yards. And offensive linemen are literally just pushing. You can't allow that. Like, Eckler didn't average a lot of yards per carry, but there's hidden yards after contact.
Yeah.
So instead of it being 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 10 or whatever, it was 2nd and 5, which just opens everything up for everything else.
Yeah. So defensively, this isn't new. Just so you know, they couldn't stop the run against Pittsburgh for the entire first half. The week before that, they're getting gouged in the run game on the edges. So, you had Pittsburgh. Teams looked at how Pittsburgh did it. So, I'm not Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. They looked at Philadelphia. Oh, wait, they can hit the edges on the Giants and they can't stop them. Well, they come into Pittsburgh. What does Pittsburgh do? They hit them in the edges and they hit them in the middle of the defense, right? Because prior to the Eagles game, they were getting hit on the inside of their defense when Dexter Lawrence was out, right? So they found something there. So the Giants haven't fixed the one flaw that they've had defensively. Now they don't hold up on the edges, and internally they don't hold up either. They're inconsistent at best, and they don't complement each other. So the ugliest offense of game you could imagine on Monday Night Football, everything that could go wrong did go wrong, right? They completely cleaned it up. I mean, there was not a procedural penalty. Good decisions were made by the quarterback. The run game, they run block great, and then your defense takes the field and they don't feel the energy that the offense is giving. The offense gave you were fresh legs every time you took the field because there weren't many three and outs for the Giants offense. Would they punt once?
Oh, they punted twice.
But they had long sustained drives.
Yeah, the only time that the Giants stopped them was the Commanders deferred the opening kickoff. The Giants went 3 and out. They held the Commanders to 3 and out, and the Commanders got the ball to start the third quarter, and the Giants held them to a 3 and out to start the third quarter. Those are the only 3 and outs. The only time they punted.
Right. So you won't get better. Your record won't change if you approach every game routine. Yes, you're at the top of the league in sacks. You think the other teams don't know that? I don't know where you rank in run defense, but they probably felt the path of least resistance was to run the football on your team. And it's going to be like this next week, and it's going to be like that the week after. And until you figure out that nothing is routine, and when you're a 2-win team, teams are going to pick everything that you're weak at, and they're going to go at it. They're going to go at it, and they're going to pound it, and they're going to make you look bad, right? So everybody's flying high about how great the defense is. Well, they do a lot of things well. One thing they don't do is stop the run. And the teams that want to have any success, they're going to figure out a way to run the ball on you until you can consistently stop it. And consistently stopping it is not, hey, we have first contact at the line of scrimmage. Well, if they're spotting the ball 5 yards later, you ain't very good tackling team. So you need to figure that out. And that needs to be part of your game plan going forward, because nothing is routine. And if you can't get it figured out when the game starts, you better have some conversations on the sideline of, hey, this is how we need to attack this runner. We don't hold up when we tackle them up high. They're pushing him. So somebody's got to take his legs. Two people got to take his legs. You got to go in there and do that. They don't do that. So,
Well, also situational awareness, Carl. You look at this game. Giants have only scored one touchdown at home all year. They got one on the board in the first half. And the end of the first half, again, it's you're good until you're not. What happened at the end of the first half is inexcusable. You got them in a 3rd and 18. And you're saying, okay, we can hold them to a long field goal attempt here. And instead, De'Ami Brown catches a short pass. Drew Phillips misses a tackle. And next thing you know, it's 24 yards later. Now they have to use their last timeout with 11 seconds to go. So now, if you're a defensive player, awareness here, you're guarding against the sideline, and they got to throw it into the end zone. Because in 11 seconds, if they throw a ball and a guy gets tackled at the 5-yard line, the odds of them getting down the field by the time the play is over, getting lined up, and getting a field goal, pretty slim, because they're out of timeouts. Yeah. And you allow a sluggo to beat you for a touchdown. It can't happen.
It can't. But here's the other part. When you talk about the situational awareness, Bob, the 3rd and 18 was on the opposite side of the 50-yard line, correct?
Correct. It was at the Giants 42.
So 3rd and 18, you get a stop. You can stop them at 3rd and 16. But you give up 24 yards. That first down completely flips the field, and it changes how Washington was even going to try to even score. They probably were thinking field goal if they could get close enough. But you give up a 3rd and 18, but you give up 24 yards, which puts them immediately in field goal range. And now they say, we got a shot at a touchdown. Situational awareness, you're playing quarters coverage. I believe that's what it was. Sluggo, your cornerback, no reason to take a bite on the inside move because you're in quarters. There's somebody there. But you take a bite on the inside, he gets you flat-footed, he runs it back out, and it's a touchdown. Just can't have it. Can't have it. Like the first touchdown to McCurlin, that's just a hell of a play by both quarterback and wide receiver, because he threw it right at the shoelaces. It's something they practice, obviously, because he went straight down and got it where the defender just could not. But the second one is just inexcusable. It's lack of situational awareness. And, but that's not the only one. You get a 3rd and 9, you give up 28 yards, and that flips the field. So that's kind of a theme also. When you look at what did Philadelphia do when they had or short yardage situation, they went A.J. Brown. And that was what, a 4th and 1. And it went for a touchdown. So, it's just these are things that losing teams do or don't do. Their attention to detail, the thing that you got right last week is not a guarantee that you get right this week, because nothing is routine. You can take nothing for granted. And you're a 2-win team for a reason. That means people believe they can get plays on you, and they are doing just that.
Yeah, I mean that, you just score a field goal to get within 8, and then you got them in a 3rd and 9 from their own 36. Eckler's part of the passing attack, and he's wide open. He's just wide open for 28 yards. And then the end of the game, the longest play of the game was the pass play to Olamide Zaccheaus for 42 on the 2nd and 9, and that was the ball game. So, Carl, a lot of people are talking about to go for 2 to not go for 2. And on the radio post-game show, John Schmelk, he wasn't advocating yes or no. He was explaining the thought process and the percentages of why teams go for 2. And I'm not anti-analytics by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a baseball fan. Baseball's all about analytics. It always has been. And every sport has analytics. You can go back to the 1970s. They keep percentages of free throw shooters in basketball because some guys make them at 90% and other guys shoot them at 63%. At the end of the game, what do? You use analytics. You foul the guy that's the bad free throw shooter. Yeah. So analytics is not new. But I think sometimes it gets overused or
misappropriated, I believe. And again, I'm going to have to dig into this, and I'm going to talk to some of the Giants analytic folks, and any of you guys out there who are analytics folks. I just want to kind of understand the rationale of going for 2. And I guess if you give yourself a chance to go for 2 twice, the likelihood of getting one of those 2 is high, or 50%. Okay. That's not really a high percentage, but okay, let's just go with that theory, right? So if your theory is, if you go for it twice, if you go for it early in the game and don't get it, you're probably going to get it the second time. That's kind of the analytical thinking. I think that's what the rationale is. So if you don't get it the first time and you get it the second time, that only counts for 2 points, right? Not 4, 2. So if you kick an extra point twice, it's the same 2 points, right? That's football math to me, right? Sure. Extra point is worth 1. If you can kick 2 extra points, that's worth 2 points. But if you are going for it, a 2-point conversion, and your rationale is if we don't get it the first time, we'll get it the second time, or we get it the first time, it may not get the second time. So you are 50% on 2 points, the rationale. Make 1, miss 1. Kick 2 extra points, same 2 points, right? Now, I'm sure the analytical community will explain that aspect to me.
Right, because as Schmelk was saying, if you make the first one, your probabilities based on the math go up to like 63% of your chance to win the game.
Right.
If you make the first one. And if you don't make the first one, you still have a swing down 8 to at least get the game tied with a 2-point conversion. So I understand the math, but finish your point.
So, yeah. So again, I don't know a lot about it, enough to understand the rationale behind things. But here's the other part. When I have a saying, my friend Eric Rose and I, analytics doesn't have a heartbeat, right?
Nope.
So I say that because number one, coaches have to go with their gut, right? That's how football coaches coach, right? But here's the other part. The analytics doesn't have a heartbeat part of it is if you're going for 2, that's in the red zone, right? Which team is dead last in red zone efficiency?
Going into the game, the Giants were dead last in touchdown percentages.
So I would have to ask the analytics people, does that factor in, or do you just go with what you're feeling for that game? Because the Giants were good in the red zone against Washington, but overall, they are not very good on the season. So does that factor in when the analytics people call down and say, hey, the numbers say if you go for it and you swing and you miss, or you swing and you make it, you got 62% chance to win? Or do you say, hey, look, we're not very good in the red zone. Let's see how it goes, right? I really want to understand that. But like if I'm looking at my team and where we are efficient, and if the numbers say, yeah, we're pretty good down here anyway, which they were during the game, the analytics folks say, go for it. Okay, then you factor that in and say, okay, we've been good, let's go for it. Or do you say, let me kick this extra point, and if we need it, we'll get it the second time. Because when you miss it the first time, now you gotta go for it the second time. Both times were they came up empty. So I just want to understand that. But if you're a bad team in the red zone, does it become a feel situation, in-game feeling, where Dabo can say, well, we're kicking ass right now in the red zone, let's go for it? Or they just go strictly by the numbers? And if they go strictly by the numbers, probably wasn't a good idea.
Well, they're 0 for this year in 2-point conversions. They haven't made one yet.
Well, that part.
Yeah. And then the other factor is maybe, you bring the kicker up from the practice squad, the kid that kicked at Rutgers. He was not very proficient as a field goal kicker last year at Rutgers. He only tried one, and he missed it. It was a 53-yarder, and the year before, he was 12 of 18. Maybe you didn't have as much confidence. If Graham Gano was kicking for you, maybe you feel a little bit more confident the extra point is not only assumed, but it will be made.
He made them. He made his extra points, though.
He made his extra point.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about analytics that I don't. You mentioned it doesn't have a heart. What about the momentum? You have struggled so hard to score points at home, yet you have your fans. They actually played back in the New York groove 3 times yesterday in the game. It's a definite buzzkill. You could feel it in the stadium. It's a buzzkill with the failure. And as the team's going back to the sideline, they're not running off the field all pumped that they scored a touchdown. They're ambling off the field because they got stopped. And Washington is all fired up. And the fans, and again, it's one thing if you have a high-powered offense that is scoring a ton of points up and down over the course of the entire season. But every point that comes to you, it feels hard. Every drive was a long drive. There weren't a lot of big explosive plays and all this other stuff. So, it's like rolling up your sleeves. Analytics doesn't take into account that stuff. It doesn't take into account emotion.
Right. It doesn't have a heartbeat. But listen, there's a lot that goes into coaching football, clearly. And they use all the resources available to them. I want to understand better, but I know that if you are 0 for the season, 2-point conversions, you're last in the league in red zone efficiency, but you're hot this particular game. What factors into those decisions? Because 2 extra points equal 2 points. One missed 2-point conversion and one made 2-point conversion is the same 2 points. Probabilities of making 2 extra points versus making 1 2-point conversion, does one outweigh the other? I don't know. I really want to understand that, because if the rationale is if you make one and miss one, it's still 2 points, or your likelihood of making the second one if you miss the first one is good. I don't know. I have to understand that, but I just know if you miss it, you got one chance to make it again, and you missed both of yours. And so that was technically 4 points off the board instead of the two that you would have had. But
You want to know what the crux? You know what the crux of all this is, Carl?
what?
If they make one of two, or if they kick 2 extra points, at the end of the day, the defense couldn't get a stop anyway.
Correct. I was just going to say it doesn't matter anyway because the team defensively did not complement your offense at all. And that's the other part too. Like if you miss that 2 point conversion, your defense should go over to your offense and say, "That's okay. We'll get it back for you. We'll get a stop." But this is a 2-win football team, and things that should make sense don't. The way you approach a game is just not, in my opinion, being approached the right way. I just think you've got to. It's just nothing is routine. If you want to get out of the hole that you're in, you have to treat every single possession, every single down, every single series as a priority. And I know, it's just starting to sound redundant, but that's just the reality of it. It's as easy as I say it is the way that you have to do it. You have to approach it that way. And, you have good players, but doesn't mean anything if you can't tackle, if you can't execute. Now, the defensive backfield is still very young. So some things you got to live with, but if you got to live with the same play 3 times in a game, that's just not acceptable, right? Over route and guys taking it for big yardage twice, and then Eckler out of the backfield on another one. Got to make that adjustment. Who's making those adjustments? You can't. I mean, that's just not winning football. When you see the same play twice and they catch you in the same look, again, I'm not assuming that the coaches are not addressing it and saying, here's our adjustment if we get this look. But the result is the same for the offense, because I'm sure the offense is saying, if we get this look, this is what we're going to run again. So one team made the adjustment, the other team didn't. Because if you gave up that big one, I'm sure somebody looked at these clips and said, well, if we get in this again, we can't allow this to come through. And if the coaches said to the players, hey, this is our adjustment, we can't let this happen, and it happens again, and then they get another one on a check down out of the backfield, you can't, it's not winning football. So look, they're all in it together, players and coaches. I don't know, because I don't sit on those sidelines, what adjustments are made, what coaches are saying and players are not doing, what's not being said. But I can tell you one thing I do know: there's been no adjustment in the way they tackle. The X's and O's piece of it, I can't tell you whether or not they're going over these things, but if it's happening more than once and you got young players, I get it. So you can get that one time. But if you make the adjustment the second time, it shouldn't happen this way. But this is why you're a 2-win team, because if adjustments are discussed and they're not made, it means you're not prioritizing and you're not situationally alert out there on the field. And like I said, the tackling piece of it, it ain't got better in 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Same type of runs. I'm sure they're saying this is the area we've got to get better at, because at the point of attack, they make good contact with the runner, but then the ball spotted 5 yards later, and can't play defense that way. You've got to be ruthless. You got to be a ruthless tackler. If you make that contact, you got to get this guy to the ground and not let him get pushed another 4 or 5 yards.
I was guessing as we were calling the game, with 2:48 to go in the game, the Commanders handed off to Rodriguez for a yard. That play used about 8 seconds. And I thought Daves was going to start burning timeouts, right? Timeout there was about 2:40 left. He said after the game that there was a certain number as far as seconds left above the 2-minute warning when he thought he would use timeouts. And he did. I don't know if this is analytics again and the clock management guys, but they decided to play it out this way. I would have called the timeout at 2:40 to have them run another play on 2nd and 9. My guess is at that point, they're going to probably run it again to force you to use your second timeout. But by not calling the timeout, Washington used the entire play clock and they snapped the ball with 2:05, which means now a pass is an option because the clock's going to stop at the 2-minute warning regardless.
Mm-hmm.
So whether they throw an incompletion or not, the clock is going to stop with the 2-minute warning. Now, of course, the Giants busted coverage, the over route, and Zacchaeus is wide open. Ball game over. It's a moot point.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, because that play was snapped at the Commanders' 31. After Zacchaeus goes for 42, now they're in field goal range at the Giant 27. And now you're just using timeouts. It's just a formality at that point. I thought they were going to use them. They didn't. But again, it's just like the 2-point conversion deal. It's just like the 2-point conversion deal. It's a moot point because the defense isn't stopping them when they got to stop them.
Right. And you give up a huge play that flips the field. That, not calling a timeout is not the worst thing in the world when they're back on their 30. But if they can flip the field and have options available to them with time on the clock, that's the difference. Like if you don't call a timeout and your defense does its job, it's a different. They don't have as many options. So they don't have these options, Bob, because you did or did not call a timeout. They have the options available to them is because they flipped the field with one play.
Right. And what you're hoping for here, and I see what Dable was thinking, if they run the clock down to the 2-minute warning, if that play is defended better and it's incomplete, so now you're at the 2-minute warning. Now you got 2 timeouts, and coming out of the 2-minute warning, they're going to be facing a 3rd and 9.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to use your first timeout. You're banking on you're stopping them on the 3rd and 9 play. So now you're using your first timeout under the 2-minute warning, and they're punting with the clock stop because you've now used that timeout
Correct.
after a 3rd down stop. And knowing your offense, and again, it's not an offense that has Justin Jefferson where you can just throw a deep post and suddenly you're 50 yards down the field. That's not the Giants' offense for the most part. So Dable's thinking was, we have to kind of plod along here. I want the ball back with 2 timeouts remaining to help my offense with,
Correct.
let's say there's a minute 50 to go after the 2-minute warning, and you got the stop on the 3rd down. You used your timeout, minute 50 to go. I want the punt to happen, and I want to have 2 timeouts in my pocket to help my offense, which is not the most prolific offense in the league. So I understand his methodology, and it comes back again to you can't get a stop when you need to.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, defense did not complement the offense this week. Offense pretty much did what they were supposed to do in the game. They did not hurt themselves at all. At all. They made the plays that were there. Yeah, they missed some catches. There were a few catches that could have been made, but they had their share of explosive plays. They ran the ball effectively. And I think someone asked, why were you afraid to put the ball in Daniel Jones' hands? Is that why you were running so well? And I think that's not the narrative you want to have this particular week, because they were getting 7 yards a carry. That's why. There's a reason why Jaden Daniels didn't throw the ball all over the lot yesterday, and I'm sure nobody asked Dan Quinn, well, couldn't you pass the ball more? He's like, no, we're running the ball on these guys. We don't need to pass. So if you're running, and it actually plays into your strategic thinking, if you can hold the ball and score, you're keeping Washington's offense off the field, which is the strength of their team. But it didn't matter, again, because every time they took the field, it was nothing the Giants could do to stop what they were doing. So, but I think philosophically, It worked. They got the passes that they wanted, and they were effective running, more than effective running the football.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. It should have probably been 7-7 at the half,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, but you give up these chunk plays when it matters. You allow Eckler to, well, maybe even 14-7 at the half. Should have never been 21-7 at the
Correct.
half. I don't know. Can I just get one? I got to get one thing off my chest and wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure someone will talk to him about it. But you and I noticed it in the booth in the fourth quarter when the Giants were driving. There was an injury timeout or something. I think one of the Commanders' players got hurt. But from a Giants fan perspective, it's just a bad optic for Malik Neighbors during a timeout when your quarterback is going over to the bench to talk to your head coach. The rest of the team is kind of huddled in the middle of the field. Don't be going over to the Commanders' bench to talk to Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the middle of a game. This is a competition. You're losing. Um, get it? You guys are super close. You're going to still be close after the game. You were still close before the game,
I
but
was
you're
on the
trying to
field.
beat this guy.
I was on the field before the game when everyone was out in the t-shirt short warm-up period, not the uniform period. And I'm on the Giant bench with my son, and all of a sudden Jane Daniels and Malik Neighbors walk right by us. I don't know if it was Malik's mom, on the field in the, where they had the VIP things roped off. It
Mm-hmm.
was a family member. The three of them took a picture. They were yucking it up. That shorts warm up time. There's a lot of socializing that goes on at that point in
Mm-hmm.
time. Coaches that know each other, coaches that might
Sure.
have been here, or vice versa, whatever. I went out and chatted with Luke McCaffrey real quick,
Mm-hmm.
Ed's son. Um, but like in the game, it's just a bad look. It's just, when you have a bad season and you're losing and Giant fans see that, it's like, come on, what are you doing that for in the fourth
Yeah, I
quarter?
mean, basically, listen, whether you're having a bad season or a good season, stay engaged. Stay engaged. You got time for that. You're trying to beat this guy today because he's beating you, and you're over there talking to him on his sideline. You need to be in your huddle with your team trying to figure out how to beat that guy. I mean, I get it. You guys have a great history and you love each other, but this ain't that time.
You're not teammates anymore.
We're not
Newsflash, you're
teammates,
professional athletes now.
right? And you're losing. Get out, beat this guy. That's what your teammates want to be. That's what your fans. And I'm not the get off my lawn type of guy because it's still competition, folks. And you can say what you want. It's competition. Your team's getting beat up. You don't have that part of it. Be a part of your team. Be a part of that process. Don't remove yourself from that process while everybody else is there. You're on their sideline, yucking it up with the quarterback. It's not a good look. But it's just not what you're supposed to do as a competitor. And again, nobody wants you not to be friends with a guy, but you're in competition. They're getting paid to beat you. You're getting paid to beat them. Like all of that socializing, pre-game, post-game, not a good look. And it shouldn't be done, period.
Right, because it's in the fourth quarter of a game that you're trying to get a touchdown to make it a one-score game. Like
Yeah.
the game is in the balance. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it takes anything away from his game or anything like that. It's just I'm speaking for the fans here. It's a bad look for Giants fans who are all wearing their Giant gear and they're out there rooting for the team and they're like, why is that guy over here during the timeout talking to him?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're off to Germany. Do you have any details that you can share? Has anything been finalized?
Not yet. I am when I get off of this podcast, I am in my office looking to see what has been produced. But before the week is out, even though I'll be in Germany, we will make sure that the fans have some insight as to what they can get when they're there and what they can get if they're not going.
Right, and we'll do a preview at some point from Germany
Yeah.
for the game. So here's what I do know. These are local times. These are Munich times.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know this. from about 6:30 in the evening until 8 p.m. on Friday. We'll be at the Hofbrahaus. Me, you, Cross, O'Hara, Victor Cruz, Phil Simms, Markus Kuhn, who played for the Giants. So at some point there, we'll be at that Hofbrahaus. And then on Saturday, the Giants house, isn't that where your setup is going to be? The Giants house?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the Giants house is Praterinsel. And we're going to be there from 4 to 7 at the Giants house. Location, Praterinsel. And we'll be there. So that's just to give fans that are watching, especially our international fans, like our friends in Great Britain, Ireland, and all that. That's a general sketch of where we're going to be on Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
At the Giant House. All right, when we end it, how do we like to end it?
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Believe in Giants.